Story 1. It's inside. The PA system crackled to life on a Thursday during second period in my junior year of high school. The familiar tones of the recorded voice filled the classroom. Lockdown. Locks. Lights. Out of sight. Lockdown. Locks. Lights. Out of sight. The words kept repeating like a mantra as Mrs. Danbury paused mid-sentence at the board and looked up at the speaker in the corner of the room. The expression on her face hardened. This wasn't a drill. "Okay, you all know what to do," she said, her voice urgent but controlled. She rushed to the classroom door, slammed it shut, and turned the lock with a metallic click that felt far too final. A nervous murmur rose up as we all got out of our seats and moved to the side of the classroom, out of view from the windows. Some kids were laughing softly, nervous laughter, but most of us felt the tension, the kind that twists your stomach in knots. "Is this real?" My friend Colin whispered next to me as we slid down the wall into a crouched position. "Must be," I said. "They'd tell us if it was just a drill." Outside, the distant thump of helicopter rotors became faintly audible. At first, it was easy to dismiss, but the sound grew louder with each passing second. Within a minute, it felt like the helicopter was directly overhead, hovering just above the roof. The lockdown voice continued in the background like a cursed lullaby. Lockdown. Locks. Lights. Out of sight. Then, a loud bang echoed through the hallway outside our room, like a metal door being thrown open with brutal force. A shout followed. Then came the unmistakable sound of automatic gunfire. I slammed my hands over my ears as the bursts of noise turned our classroom into a chamber of fear. Several of the girls gasped and covered their mouths. Even some of the boys, guys I'd seen lift weights or mess around in the gym, looked pale and terrified. Another burst of gunfire, and then an unearthly screech, shrill, high-pitched, and completely alien. The kind of sound that doesn't come from any animal you've ever heard. It made my skin crawl. I looked over at Mrs. Danbury. Her face had gone completely pale. She was crouched near the front of the room, just a few feet from the door. She wasn't blinking. The gunfire stopped, replaced by a man's voice shouting commands, maybe, but then came the scream. A raw, primal cry of pain. It ended with a heavy, metallic bang, like a body being thrown against lockers. We didn't need to see it to know. We could imagine it too clearly. The sounds told us everything. Another short burst of gunfire. Then silence. Deafening silence, except for the looping PA message and the distant thrum of the helicopter still circling above. Then, running. Heavy footsteps in the hallway. They approached fast, but stopped just as suddenly. A horrible scream followed, cut short by a sickening crash. The door to our classroom exploded inward as a SWAT officer flew into the room. He crashed into Mrs. Danbury's desk, sending it skidding across the tile floor. A ripple of screams broke out among the students. The officer, what was left of him, was missing an arm. His spine was clearly broken, his body twisted unnaturally. He wasn't moving. Silence returned. For a long moment, nothing happened. The door hung open on one hinge, creaking slightly. Then, as if some internal switch flipped, Mrs. Danbury began crawling toward the open doorway. Maybe she thought the worst was over. Maybe she thought someone out there needed help. I don't know what she was thinking. She peered into the hall, her hand rising to cover her mouth. Her whole body trembled. When she turned back to us, her face was drained of life. "We need to move," she said, her voice barely more than a whisper. "The hall." She didn't finish. From the ceiling just outside the doorway, a grotesque, blistered red and black arm dropped down. It moved fast. Too fast, and grabbed her by the neck with claws like rusted knives. She screamed, and in one swift jerk, the thing yanked her out of the room. The noise that followed, a thud and a wet tearing sound, made several students cry out. I wanted to vomit. Then, impossibly, she stumbled back into view. She had no arms. Blood sprayed from the torn stumps as she stood there in a daze. It was like her mind hadn't caught up with her body yet. Then her eyes widened, and she turned and ran, straight for the windows on the far wall. Blood painted her path in a gruesome arc as she screamed. Just as she reached the window, the thing that had attacked her surged into the room. It was massive, towering. Its body looked like a nightmarish blend of a bear and a baboon, charred and scarred, as if it had survived an explosion. Its jaw was filled with jagged, blackened teeth. Its eyes glowed a dull, feverish yellow. Tackled her at full speed. The two of them crashed through the window and disappeared. We sat frozen. No one moved. We were too shocked, too terrified to process what had just happened. Her screams continued outside, muffled slightly by the shattered glass. Then came a sound that haunts me to this day, a loud, wet rip, followed by silence. None of us breathed. We stared at the window, waiting, but the creature didn't come back. Eventually, the grotesque sounds from outside stopped. The silence that followed felt even worse. Then, from far away, we heard gunfire. It was distant, definitely off campus. But it was enough to stir something inside me. I stood slowly, knees trembling. I crept to the broken doorway and peeked into the hall. Carnage. The hallway was littered with bodies. Students, officers, teachers. Blood pooled and splattered across lockers. A man with a crushed skull lay beneath a series of deep dents in a locker door. Someone else was missing their legs entirely. A few of the other guys, Colin among them, got up to follow. Together, we helped the rest of the class to their feet and moved into the hall, tiptoeing past the fallen. We were halfway to the evacuation point when we encountered more police entering the building. They didn't ask questions. They just got us out. That night, the news said it was a bear, an escaped animal from the zoo. They even showed stock footage of a tranquilized grizzly being wheeled out on a gurney. It was a joke. It wasn't a bear. It wasn't any kind of animal I've ever seen. And the fact that there's a military research facility just 5 miles from our school? That's not a coincidence. We've all agreed never to talk about it publicly. We nod and go along when people say it was a bear. But those of us in that room, we know the truth. And we know it's still out there. Story 2, Lockdown. It was supposed to be a normal Thursday afternoon at Valley Ridge High School. The rain had started around 1 p.m., just a steady patter on the windows at first. Nothing unusual. But by the time 6th period began, the sky had turned a deep charcoal, and thunder was rumbling in the distance. I was in Mr. Keaton's history class, trying to stay awake while he lectured about post-war reconstruction. Suddenly, a loud buzz from the intercom interrupted him. All teachers, initiate lockdown procedures immediately. This is not a drill. I repeat, this is not a drill. The voice was shaky, uneven. It wasn't the calm, collected tone of our principal, Mr. Rourke. It was someone else, someone scared. Mr. Keaton paused mid-sentence, furrowing his brow. Everyone against the back wall. Now. We did as he said without question. Chairs scraped across the floor as 20 students shuffled toward the back of the classroom. Mr. Keaton locked the door, turned off the lights, and pulled down the blackout shade. The room darkened instantly, and the only sound was the rain intensifying against the windows. Then, silence. We all sat there, breathing quietly, exchanging confused looks. Some kids were whispering, asking if this was another false alarm like the one we had during a fire drill last semester. But the look on Mr. Keaton's face said otherwise. I remember glancing over at Jamie, who sat beside me. Her hands were trembling. She mouthed, "Do you think it's real?" I didn't answer. 10 minutes passed. Maybe more. And then footsteps. Out in the hallway. They were slow. Deliberate. Not like someone running. Not even like someone walking normally. Creeping. Click, click, click. They echoed off the linoleum floors. Then they stopped right outside our door. My breath caught in my throat. Whoever was out there didn't knock. Didn't try the handle. They just stood there. We waited. Minutes passed, each second dragging out like a lifetime. My ears strained in the silence, trying to hear anything. Breathing, movement, whispering. Nothing. Then came the softest knock. Not a fist pounding, just a gentle tap tap tap, like someone dragging their nails on the wood. Mr. Keaton didn't move. He was frozen in place, crouched behind his desk, eyes fixed on the door. Then another knock. But this time, it came from the window. We all turned at once. Outside, in the storm, through the sheet of rain running down the glass, we saw it. A figure. Tall.
Soaking wet.
Its head tilted to one side like it was trying to see into the room. The face was blurry, smeared by the water on the pane, but I could make out something that didn't look right. The proportions were off. It was like someone had sketched a human face from memory but got the details wrong. Someone gasped. Then the figure slowly raised a hand and tapped the glass with its fingertip.
Top. Top. Top.
Stay down, mister. Keaton hissed. We crouched lower. The figure just stood there, watching, waiting, and then it moved on. We listened as the footsteps faded down the hall. Click, 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 like boots echoing on tile. Then silence again. Just when we thought the worst might be over, the fire alarm blared. A few of us screamed. Red lights flashed, casting eerie shadows across the room. Mr. Keaton swore under his breath. Do not move. Stay in place. That alarm wasn't pulled by school staff. That's a trap. Something about the way he said it, so certain, so scared, made us all freeze. Then the intercom crackled again. But it wasn't the same voice. It wasn't even human. A guttural sound, distorted and static-laced, hissed through the speaker. Come out. I see you. Several students started crying quietly. That voice, it didn't belong to any human. It sounded wrong, like something mimicking speech, like a predator imitating a person. I checked my phone, no signal, no bars. Jamie checked hers too. Nothing. Then, as if on cue, every phone in the room buzzed at once. We all looked down. No messages.
No notifications.
Just one thing. All our screens showed the same image. A single eye, white, bloodshot, staring. Then they all turned off. Everything turned off. The power, the lights, even the emergency exit signs blinked out. We sat in total darkness. Then came the scraping. RKKK. A metal-on-metal sound, like nails on a locker door. It was getting closer. SKRRRKKK. Scrape, scrape. I held my breath. So did everyone else. Then, something slammed into the door. Bang! Again. Bang! Then silence. Mr. Keaton slowly got up and inched toward the door. No, don't! Someone whispered. He held a finger to his lips. Then he leaned in, trying to listen. Silence. He carefully peeked through the small glass pane in the door and screamed. We all jumped. He fell back, crawling away, pale as a sheet. It's not. It's not a person. It's not. Before he could finish, we heard it again. Laughter. Not human laughter. Too deep, too glitchy. It was like an audio file corrupted by static. Then, the doorknob started to turn. But it was locked. The thing on the other side began to slam itself against the door harder and harder. We braced for it to break through. And then, it stopped. Another moment of silence. Then we heard a new sound. A scream. Distant, echoing from down the hall. Then more footsteps, running. Human footsteps this time. A loud voice. Everyone remain in lockdown. Help is coming. It was Officer Daniels, our school resource officer. We heard shouting, more footsteps, then a gunshot. Just one. Then nothing. Dead quiet. The next few minutes were a blur. Eventually, we heard someone with a key open our door. It was Officer Daniels, alive, bleeding from his shoulder. Get out. Now, stay behind me. We poured into the hallway. The smell of gunpowder and something else. Something rotten. Hung in the air. The halls were a mess. Lockers torn open. Doors scratched. And smeared across the floor. A black, tar-like substance trailed down the corridor and disappeared into the storm outside. We never found out what it was. Police said it was a false alarm. That someone hacked the intercom and set off the fire alarm as a prank. But no one could explain the eye on our phones. Or what Mr. Keaton saw through that window. He resigned a week later. And no one's heard from Jamie since. Sometimes, I think I hear that tap on my bedroom window, especially when it rains.